So when we arrived to the hospital, they wheeled me right into one of the operating rooms, and the OB that was on that day, he came in and did an internal exam, and he confirmed what my midwives told me, that the baby's head was turned to the side. So he came to me and asked me if I wanted a forceps delivery or a C-section. So I had to think about it, just because with forceps he could have facial bruising, facial paralysis, neck injury, that sort of thing. And but I didn't want to have a C-section, because once you have one, your next babies are probably going to be another C-section as well. And plus it's major surgery too. So I decided to do a forceps delivery, and my midwives agreed that that was a good idea, because it's still a vaginal birth, and they were happy that that's what the doctor gave me that option, because if it was a real emergency, they would have wheeled me into the operating room, given me a spinal, and done a C-section right away. So they said that I had to have an epidural, because you can't have a forceps delivery without one. It's just way too painful. So I agreed to having an epidural for that reason. And so I kept looking at the clock and wondering when the anesthesiologist was coming, because during that whole time I was still having contractions. They weren't hurting because they were the pushing contractions, but they were really annoying. And they also told me that they had to wait for, because they gave me an IV, and they had to wait for the full bag to be emptied inside of me. And so an hour passed, and the anesthesiologist came, and he did the epidural. It didn't hurt at all, and he put it in one try. And it was actually a real relief to have that epidural in, because the whole time I was pushing, and even when he was giving me the epidural, I kept having the urge to push, and it was really hard to try to stay still. I don't know if any of you have ever had an epidural while you're pushing. It's way different than if you're having a contraction, because for me it was easy. You could stay still when you're having a contraction, but with an epidural you just can't, because your body is spasming. So yeah, they put it in, and I was numb basically from the rib cage down. And in the meantime, I had at least 3 other doctors come in to do internal exams, and I was not happy with that, because it's like all these different people, and they're like violating you. To me, it felt like that. And it was another half an hour before the whole team came in to do the whole delivery, and I couldn't feel my contractions at all. It was a 5th-year resident that performed the forceps delivery, and in the room I had the original OB. There was 2 other residents there to watch. I guess it was, I don't know if it's just out of the ordinary's delivery, and I had a few nurses in the room, a neonatal team, and the anesthesiologist, plus my 2 midwives, my doula and husband. So it was a pretty crowded room in there. I started bawling just because it was so overwhelming. It was just not what I wanted. It wasn't a nice, quiet home birth. It's just like it's a bright room with many people, and different people giving you internal exams and having epidural and IV, and yeah, but I guess I just had to, I just wanted to have a healthy baby come out. and so I couldn't feel my contractions. My midwife would put her hand on my stomach, and I guess when it would get hard is when I would have a contraction, and she would tell the OB that. And anyways, she would tell me to push, and oh yeah, and you know on TV when everyone's yelling at the woman to push, yeah, that's what it was like there. So they would tell me to push, and I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't even tell if I was pushing properly. So I guess with the forceps, they turned to the baby's head, they straightened him out, and they tucked in his chin and before they pulled him out. So yeah, so I was pushing him out, and I remember hearing the OB say, oh, the next contraction you'll have the head out. And I think it was at least 3 more contractions before the head was out. And they said that the baby's head was really big, and that the baby was really big. He ended up being 8 pounds 10 ounces. And so anyways, he was delivered. I was really exhausted by that time, because basically I was pushing for 3.5 hours, almost 4 hours of pushing. So I was worried that they were going to give me an episiotomy, because my midwives informed me that that's what they do sometimes. So I just kind of assumed that they would, but they didn't. And they were actually surprised that I only had a 1-degree tear, and it was an internal tear, so they only had to give me 2 stitches. So I was really happy about that, because that was one less intervention that I was worried about. So they didn't put the baby on my stomach or anything. They took him away right away. The neonatal team went and checked him out and cleaned him up. And so after the placenta was delivered, I don't know if this is routine or if it was just for me, but after the baby was delivered, they gave me oxytocin right away for the bleeding, like to prevent any bleeding and to have the placenta deliver faster. So yeah, so after the placenta was delivered, stitches done, everyone left, and it was just my midwives that stayed with me and my husband and doula. And they stayed and they did the checks on the baby. And so the baby was delivered about 2 in the afternoon. So that was about 10 hours total from my first contraction. Yeah, so I tried breastfeeding, but I couldn't get him to latch on, and I think it was from, I don't know if it was because he was having a forceps delivery or from the epidural. My doula reassured me that, because I didn't want to expose my baby to any type of drugs, right? But she reassured me that I only had the epidural in my system for such a short time that it probably won't affect the baby that much. So I just tried to think positively that way. So I had to get admitted, and I was in a hospital room with 3 other mothers and their babies. And anyways, then I didn't expect the recovery to be so horrible. The pain of the recovery was worse than my contractions, I think. It was really painful to sit up and to even roll, because my tailbone, it felt like my tailbone was bruised so bad. And yeah, it was really like I needed someone to come and help me go to the washroom. I had to call the nurses in just to you know, lift the head of the bed up and to put it down.